Everybody in this sport respects the danger. You strap on the gear, you know what you're signing up for. But there's a difference between crashing hard and crashing weird. Hard is expected. Weird is what keeps you up at night, rewatching the clip trying to figure out what actually happened. That's what this list is. The crashes that had no business going down the way they did. Let's start with the one that still stings for the Lawrence fans, Hangtown 2024. At that point, Jet had put together something nobody in the sport had ever seen. 24 straight moto wins, back-to-back perfect season. And for context, that streak tied him with James Stewart for third on the all-time list. He was writing history every single weekend. And Hangtown is a gnarly track. Massive elevation changes, steep downhills that punish even the slightest mistake in body position. Early in the moto, Jet was tackling a high-speed downhill when his rear wheel found a soft pocket of freshly watered dirt at the base of the run and ejected him off the bike. No massive jump, no traffic, just a rear end washing out on a patch of dirt that had no right being there. That's what makes it so weird. It wasn't a battle, it wasn't a brain fade on a big jump. One of the most dominant streaks in modern motocross history ended because of a soft spot on a downhill. Over in MXGP, Tim Gaster had his own strange one at the GP of Switzerland. If you've watched MXGP, you've seen those packed dirt berms track builders stack up to stop guys from cutting corners. Basically a wall of earth right at the edge of the line. The commentators called them turrets. Some fans started calling them brick houses, because that's exactly what hitting one feels like. Gaster was pushing hard, threading a tight line when he clipped the edge of one of those banks. It didn't give at all. The thing barely moved. He did. The impact was instant. No slow build, no moment where you could see it coming. Just a direct collision with a stationary object at full race pace. Down in a blink. It's a weird category of crash entirely. Hitting something that's supposed to be part of the track's safety design, and unfortunately, it cost him the championship. If you want the definition of terrifying, this is the one, Atlanta 2021. This was the 250SX class, and McAdoo was running fifth when he got off rhythm going into a tunnel jump. He went over the bars head first and slammed straight into the face of the jump at full speed. And then it got worse. His left feet hooked underneath the handlebars as the bike flipped, and it sent him cartwheeling up and over the top of the obstacle like a rag doll. He lay there and didn't move. The race was red flag. For a solid minute, everyone watching thought that was it for his season. But McAdoo got up, argued his case to the Alpine Stars medics on the side of the track, passed the head injury eval, and lined up for the restart. He briefly led out of the first turn, finished third on a bike held together by zip ties and duct tape with a wrecked leg and a bad hand. Ricky Carmichael summed it up best. He said McAdoo was tough as a $2 steak. Hard to argue with that. Some crashes are violent, some are fast, and then some are just strange. Nashville 2024. Sexton was working through a rhythm section. Nothing out of the ordinary when the bike just looped out. Front end came up, the rear wheel kept going, and he was off the back before he could do anything about it. What made this one weird was the reaction. Sexton didn't get up and shake it off. He got up, turned around, and looked directly at his bike, like he was trying to figure out what it had just done to him. Then he gestured toward his mechanic. That's the tell. A rider of his caliber doesn't loop out on a standard transition unless something wasn't right. Whether it was a mechanical issue, a setup problem, or the track just eating him alive, it never got a clean explanation on the broadcast. And that ambiguity is what makes it stick. This one genuinely hurt to watch. Detroit 2023. Plessinger had the lead in the 450 main, and he wasn't just holding on. At one point, he had 8 seconds on the field. 8 seconds on the best 450 riders in the world. He was absolutely in another zip code. Then, with about 2 laps to go, he came through a rutted section he'd been steering the same way all moto. Sitting down, foot out every single lap. Then, for some reason or another, he decided to stand up through it. His foot caught the rut and ripped him straight off the bike. He said it himself after. "The one time I think it's all right to stand up, it catches my foot and rips me right off the bike." That is the hardest kind of crash to process. No contact, no brain fade, no massive speed. He literally changed his body position once after doing it the same way 20 times in a row. That single decision on what should have been a routine lap cost him the biggest win of his career. This crash ended a career. When Villopoto went to Europe to campaign MXGP in 2015, it felt like it was going to be the RV show. Four-time AMA Supercross champion. It felt like it was going to be the RV show. One of the most clinical, calculated riders the sport had ever seen. Nobody expected him to struggle. At Trentino in the second moto, while he was battling for a podium position, the bike just looped out over a small jump. No major collision, no obvious trigger. Just a hidden violent loop out that slammed him straight down onto the hard pack, directly on his tailbone. Fractured coccyx. And when the full extent of the damage came back, it was worse than they initially thought. He eventually withdrew from the series entirely, and a few months later, announced his retirement. One of the greatest American motocross riders ever, and it ended on a random loop out over a small jump at GP that most casual fans have probably forgotten. That's the sport. Daytona eats guys every year, and 2025 was no different. Kitchen was in the 250SX East class, running third on lap 4, when he came into a front stretch rhythm section carrying too much speed. He overshot the first jump in the lane, and that was the domino that knocked everything else down. Once you're out of phase at Daytona, there is nowhere to readjust. The track doesn't give you a second chance. He endoed over the bars and came down hard into the next jump. The injuries told the real story. Broken collarbone, fractures in his back. The kind of crash where the replay slows down and the crowd just goes quiet. Daytona has always had a way of turning a half-foot mistake into a full-speed disaster. Kitchen found that out the hard way. Here's the thing about all of these. None of them happened because someone made an obviously dumb decision. No one flew into a corner way too hot or tried something beyond their ability. Most of these were freak moments. A soft patch of dirt, a foot that moved an inch, a small jump that said, nope, that's the sport. The margin between winning and getting stretchered off isn't always about skill. Sometimes it's just which patch of dirt you happen to hit on lap 7. Which one of these hits different for you? Drop it in the comments. And if you're new here and you watch this whole thing, subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from. See you at the gate drop.